welcome to Brewing Success, where growth is the mission, change is the reward, and progress is the goal. I am your host, Andrea Gebhardt. I'm a former educator turned passionate entrepreneur whose desire to create impact has never wavered. I have spent the last decade teaching, mentoring, and coaching people on how to create success in their lives and businesses with proven strategies and systems that not only bring about change, but big results. When it comes down to it, teaching is my specialty, leadership is my jam, and inspiring you to live a bigger, fuller life is what I'm all about. This podcast will give you the knowledge and tools you need to brew success in almost any area of your life. You're going to walk away each week feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to step outside your comfort zone and into the next level of who you're meant to be. Now let's get into today's episode. Thank you for joining me and coming back to Brewing Success. My name is Andrea Gebhardt, and I'm so ready to talk about that second half of the race. Today, we're going to be talking about a half marathon of learnings. And if you were with me on the last episode, I talked about the first half of the race, miles 1 through 6, and I got so much overwhelming feedback about how mile 6 really resonated with so many of you. And I'm so grateful that you reached out and shared that with so many different people. And there's one of two things that took place after that last episode. One, you were really inspired to maybe try running a half marathon, or you were deeply convicted that you will never do such a thing. But today we're going to be talking about that second half of the race. We're going to kick it off with mile 7, which what I took away from that was just one step at a time. You know, I talked about mile 6 being so incredibly tough, but mile 7 was really a war against my mind. Mile 7 meant that there were 6 more miles to go. And all I could think about was how long it took me to get the first 6 done and how my body was already feeling at that point. It was wrecked. It was freaking wrecked. Everything hurt. And maybe this is why you're supposed to train or have the right shoes. And maybe this is why you don't just do a half marathon without preparation. So I turned the music up even louder and I turned my gaze down to my feet where I just focused on one step, just another step and another step. Just that one step at a time. I literally was just watching my feet. Okay, one more. People along the waterway shouted words of encouragement. The people who were walking their dogs tightened their leashes so the dogs weren't tempted to sniff the runners, and the busy roar of the city filled the entire background. I just kept thinking to myself, like, this is so freaking hard, like so much harder than I thought it would be. I kept looking down at my feet, just one more step. And I knew that if they kept moving, I would eventually get through mile 7 and on my way to mile 8. Like maybe if I didn't look up, mile 7 wouldn't exist. Maybe if I didn't look up and only focus on the movement of my feet, maybe it would be easier. Did I feel like going forward? I absolutely did not. But I had to because it's what I needed to do. Mile 7 taught me about the importance of discipline, about doing things, even the hard things when you don't feel like it. Staying the course, whether you're getting the applause or not. Mile 7 taught me that motivation is fleeting and discipline is long-lasting. We have to be disciplined to achieve success. We have to keep taking the steps, not always because we want to, but because we have to. It's what's required. And it's funny how discipline really revealed itself at this part of the journey, in the struggle. Why? Because discipline is a great separator of those who succeed and those who don't. Mile 7 taught me about that. Just one more step, taking the steps, doing the steps, even when it's hard, even when it's challenging, even when nobody's clapping for you. And I know so many times in your journey, you lost that beginning motivation. You lost that intrinsic desire to do what you're doing. And the basic actions of every day become mundane and boring, and you lose interest in that. And that's where developing discipline is so important, because no matter what you want to achieve, there's some point where motivation is going to wear off, and it's the discipline that's going to keep you going. It's the discipline that's going to help you reach the finish line. It's the discipline that's going to continue to bring progress along the way. If we solely rely on motivation, yes, at the beginning of the race, I was motivated. I was excited for a mile, and then that went away, and then I had to fight for it. And here we are in mile 7, and my mind and my body are just at war, and I'm struggling, and I'm just focusing on one more step, because I know that if I continue to put one foot in front of the other, I'm going to get to that next mile and I'm going to be over this hurdle. And I want you to put one foot in front of the other and get yourself to that next mile in your journey and get yourself over the current hurdle that you're in. Let's talk about mile 8. Even when it's hard, push through. Mile 8 was different because the land started to change. Mile 8 was full of small hills, up and down, hard pavement, the sun blazing, the smell. I mean, San Francisco, come on. Like the smell of some pretty incredible ethnic food. It was just yummy. I was hungry, thirsty, sweating in places I don't want to talk about. And my body seemed to kind of like it found this rhythmic movement that no longer required my mind. Everything ached with the impact of each step. I felt every step in my ankles, my knees, my hips, my back. And I couldn't stop thinking about like people who actually do this, like do running for fun, for sport. I couldn't stop thinking about people who run a whole marathon, like double this, like 26 miles by choice. Mile 8 was hard. The Greatest Showman continued to play from my phone, and I just kept pushing through the movement, pushing through the challenging thoughts, through the temptation to walk and stop and take a break. At this point, I consumed 6 packets of goo and was thankful for the dehydration it was surely preventing. Because at that point, I just had nothing. I had nothing left. It was then that I saw mile 9 up ahead. And when I realized I was almost there, and this like refreshing level of new energy washed over me, and my thoughts transformed from this is hard to I can do this. So when you're on your leadership journey, you're going to encounter many adversities, challenges, and setbacks, and your job is to push through them all. Each one you face is designed to teach you something, equip you with a new skill set, or provide you with like an impactful perspective that will enable you to lead others more successfully. The challenges aren't meant to stop you. They're meant to change you. And it's all a part of the growth process. But if we don't push through, we fail to learn and experience the lessons we're supposed to. Like if I had quit at any of the miles, I wouldn't have won the memory and the experience, but also the valuable lessons that I learned from it, and how I've been able to just apply them to different areas and arenas of my life and how it's served me. Let's talk about mile 9. Adjust your focus along the way. Listen, when that 9th mile hits, your body gets very loud and your mind gets very loud. You're getting closer, but it's still so far away, and you suddenly realize it's not just 13 miles, but 13 and a quarter? There are people at this point whizzing past you, moving with the smoothness of a gazelle in the wild, while you are clunking along, barely lifting each foot off the ground enough to move it forward, and realizing that leggings were not the best idea, inner thighs matter, and you probably should have doubled up on deodorant because you keep smelling but not seeing a taco truck. But if you focus on the hard, everything is just going to get harder. So you need to adjust your focus. So for a moment, I would focus on the lyrics of a song and think about the scene from that movie. Then I would look ahead and count the houses, the trees, people with dogs. Then I would think about all the people right behind me and further behind me. And when they would look up, they would see me still moving. In that moment, I hoped I served maybe as an inspiration to keep going. I thought about each of my kids and how they would ask about the race and how I wanted to tell them about how I finished and how hard but rewarding it was. That thought actually caused a little pep in my step, and it was empowering, actually. Adjusting my focus to the end, to the phone calls, to the posts I would obviously make to share that I am in fact still alive after this crazy day. It's almost like that scene in Elf when the crowd starts singing and it powers Santa's sleigh enough to get it back up into the sky. It was like that. It was adjusting my focus, changing my perspective. As leaders, we're going to have to adjust our focus. The goal may not change, but the strategy might, and that's okay. There are different aspects of the journey that are going to require different levels of focus. And when we adjust our focus, what it does is it allows us to tune into other aspects that need attention, or see opportunities we didn't see before, or spot potential challenges and adjust accordingly to prevent failure. Adjusting our focus is required. If we focus solely on the negatives, we get more negatives. If we focus on the hardworking people on our teams instead of the complainers, we get a better culture. If we focus on the vision, the steps we need to take become more clear. Sometimes you're going to have to adjust your focus to give you the energy required to keep going. Like, bam, like mind blown, like, wow. What was so interesting is my body was wrecked. My mind was wrecked. Here I was. And mile 9, like, oh, there's still more to go. But it was adjusting my focus, focusing on the houses, thinking about what I was going to tell my kids about, thinking about the post. I adjusted my focus to the end and what it's going to feel like and be like. And it held me accountable. I thought about the people who were behind me looking ahead as me serving as an inspiration. I adjusted my focus, and that gave me a pep in my step. That reminded me of why I was doing this. You're going to have to adjust your focus at times in your journey to give you the energy you need to get to that finish line. Mile 10. I was like kind of pumped at mile 10. I've got this. That was kind of like what I realized in mile 10. I've got this. There was something about seeing that double digit on that mile marker, you guys. I remember stopping, taking a picture and saying, psh, like piece of cake from here. Part of that was how I really felt, right? I was excited. The other part was me hyping myself up. Dang, I just completed 10 miles. I think the coolest part about doing something you've never done before is getting to celebrate the big milestones. And when you're running a half marathon for the first time, untrained like me, you get 13 big ones, 13 big milestones in a very short amount of time. My dopamine level was at an all-time high. I felt confident. I felt proud. I felt unstoppable. I also felt every bone in my foot, every ligament in my knee, and every ounce of my hips screaming out in agony. My mind was saying, go, 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 but my body was begging, no, no, no. But as you are well aware, mind over matter. The phrase, I've got this, was on repeat in my brain. I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. It felt good to know that I was just 3 miles out. I already ran 3 miles 3 times. This last 3 I can do too. So there's a certain level of like confidence and assuredness that kind of came into play. There's nothing like that decisive knowing that washes over you. Have you had that ever happen where you just get this, you just know it's going to work out. You just know you've got it. You go from being unsure to certain. That like change of energy, that change of thought it's just electric. It really is. And at this point in the race, there are groups of people standing on each side cheering and chanting for their favorite runner. I would just look at them and wave and say thank you and giggle as perplexed expressions took over their faces because they weren't cheering for me. I just pretended that they were. The ground was even and my pace felt somewhat faster, and I was the most excited about reaching the next mile marker, 1 marker close to the finish line. So when was the last time you served as your own hype person? When is the last time you told yourself that you've got this? When was the last time you reminded yourself of what you've already accomplished, how far you've already come, and what you're capable of? That's what we got to do on our journey. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves, I've got this. When you're scared, tell yourself, I've got this. When you're unsure, tell yourself, I've got this, until that decisive knowing washes over you and a new level and layer of conviction and posture and confidence is just there and gives you that boost that you need. I love it. It's so excited. So be your own hype person, right? Next up, mile 11. This one was interesting because I thought the battle was over. The battle against my body was it was there. But I thought I had kind of won the battle against my mind. But mile 11 showed me something different. And the lesson I took away from that one is don't let your inner voice take you off the path. I entered mile 11 with a renewed sense of confidence. But it quickly changed. Suddenly, everything felt heavy. And my once positive and encouraging self-talk turned very dark. My body at this point was moving out of habit, each foot moving and each bent arm swinging out of obligation. And I found myself in a swirl of negative thoughts. This is hard. I thought my hips are killing me. What was I thinking? I don't know if I can keep running. Suddenly, the last 3 miles became the most daunting, and I began to question if I would even be able to finish. I envisioned pretend passing out, walking the rest of the way. It was like my thoughts turned against me, and I was fighting through this thick web of lies. My mind began to weave each layer stickier and harder to break through. The echoes of negativity were slowly disrupted by clapping and cheering and people yelling and whistling, and my eyes slowly worked their way up from the pavement to the crowd where there were tons of people lining the streets. Dads standing with kids, whole families huddled together, grandparents, wives taking photos, and the more I focused on the good, the less negative thoughts I began to have. I realized then that I could see the mile 12 marker up ahead. And I just began repeating positive thoughts and words of encouragement to myself. Suddenly, my posture changed, my pace changed, and my outlook changed. I was back in the race. Sometimes when we are on the journey, pursuing our dreams and goals, we find ourselves in challenging and difficult situations, and we feel defeated, and we struggle to maintain focus on what matters and tend to get swept up in the problems we're up against. The noise, the distractions, the weight of the worry, the inability to see the light at the end of the tunnel, it all begins to take a toll on our vision, our determination, and our overall outlook. And we start to question our worth, our value, our capabilities, and we start to flirt with the dangerous idea of quitting and giving up. Like, how many of you can relate to this? I think this is probably the most relatable aspect. We find ourselves in setbacks or challenges, and we feel defeated, and we lose focus, and then we start to question who we are and what we're capable of, if we're worthy or deserving. And it takes a toll on our vision, our determination. And this is when we reach that point of like, should I just quit? Should I just give up? Should I just let this dream go? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. This is where all those things start to happen. And it's only when we remember that there are people counting on us to make it to the finish line that can change. When we focus on the good of where we are and what we've done and cling tightly to the flickering spark of passion inside of us, that we're able to rise above where we are and find the strength and tenacity to push forward with passion and purpose. Too many people give up when they're right around the corner from their next big breakthrough or goal. Never let that be you. I'm going to tell you something right now. If you are in the 11th mile of your race, of your journey, remember this. Keep going. You are almost there. Mile 12. Celebrate how far you've come. The moment I saw the mile 12 marker, I felt a renewed sense of empowerment. And once my feet led me past it, like you crossed the line, I also began to sense some relief. I was that much closer to the finish line. My brain and my body were no longer in communication. My body was just moving, and my brain began to reflect, summarize, and analyze this entire event. My mind was flooded with thoughts, all in my voice, all happening at the same time. Each thought conjured up a facial expression that I wasn't aware of, but anyone watching me surely saw and was puzzled by, because they probably made no sense. Thoughts about how I cannot even believe I just ran 12 miles for like the first time in my life, accompanied by a proud smirk and a head nod. The thought of how tough mile 6 was and how that was like 6 miles ago, followed by an eye roll, a head shake, and a deep sigh. Thoughts about how I'm almost done running my first half marathon, followed by a prideful head wobble, a bite of the lip, and a squeal of excitement. I began to think about where I was just a few hours ago, awaiting the beginning of the race and every mile in between. All of the thoughts I had to overcome, all of the physical pain I had to endure, all of the doubt I began to experience, I overcame it all. And it has all led me to this point. I had come so far. Not just 12 miles, not just a couple of hours. I'd come so far mentally and emotionally as a human. in this race, and I was dang proud of it. Celebrating how far I'd come gave me the fuel and the belief I needed to not just finish this race, but run through the tape. You see, in life, we have to make sure we stop every once in a while and remember how far we have come. When we are knee deep in the race of life, it's easy to lose sight of our accomplishments, our ability to overcome, and our overall sense of belief and confidence, especially during trying times. When we celebrate how far we've come, our perspective shifts and our mindset changes, and we're reminded of what we are capable of. We're reminded that we have what it takes. We're reminded that we have already survived 100% of our most challenging days, and that perspective is empowering. That perspective ignites action, and most importantly, that perspective summons a level of belief and endurance that is needed to get to the next goal in the journey. When we celebrate how far we've come, we honor our past. We honor the hardships as they have shaped and molded us into the person who is equipped to do big things. Mile 13, finish strong. At this point in the race, the road was becoming a little more crowded as the pathway to the race started to narrow to a single street lined with hundreds of people. The energy was electrifying. The hum of the crowd was motivating. People were clapping, cheering. You could hear the music from the finish line playing. It was pretty special. Just keep going, I told myself. I felt my body wanting to start to slow down, knowing this was the last bit, but I didn't want to lose the pace that I had kept. I took everything I learned at this point to get me through these last 5,000 steps. I soaked up the scenery. I focused on the people around me. I maintained positive thoughts and mostly couldn't believe I actually made it. I was almost there. I wanted to finish strong, so strong. And so I held my head up and I increased my pace by just enough to make my body strongly discourage any idea to change anything up at this point. And I was so close to the finish line, so excited. And as I approached what I surely thought was the finish line, it wasn't. It was just a corner. And the announcement that there was still a quarter of a mile to go. Are you freaking kidding me? How come nobody told me this? How come nobody told me it was 13.1 miles? Who told this lie? Mile 13.1. Insert facepalm. You are stronger than you think. Literally, you guys, I was so mad and I was so annoyed at the same time. How come no one ever said it was 13 and then some miles? I felt cheated. Honestly, I did. However, as I turned the corner, the crowds of people multiplied. The sounds of cheers escalated. The music from the finish line was blaring, and there were groups of people among the rope lines taking pictures. And this is when I lost it. I just started bawling. I could barely even see where I was going because my eyes were drowning in tears. And I just kept saying, I did it. I actually did it. I did it. I actually did it. Like I just did something I never knew I could do, and I did it well. I just accomplished something major. It was tears of joy and tears of pride and surely tears of relief. I crossed the finish line. I crossed the finish line. I placed my hands on my hips and I just stopped, took a wicked deep breath, looked up to the sky and just soaked up the entire moment before 3 people rapidly approached me, offering me a small cup of beer, chocolate milk, and a banana. And if you know me, gluten is out and dairy is scary, so I noshed on a banana and walked over to the tent to get my medal. You know, I want to remind you that you're always stronger than you think you are. No matter what struggle you are currently facing or how hard and challenging of a situation you're in, you are stronger than you think. You are stronger than you give yourself credit for. You can and you will overcome any obstacle. It's just going to take unwavering belief, one foot in front of the other, and the upfront decision that no matter what, you won't quit, you won't give up, that you will do whatever it takes to cross that finish line, even if it is 13.1 miles of craziness. P.S. For all of you guys questioning how well I did, I Googled my time of 3 hours and 30 minutes, and it's not all that great. But it was never about how long it was going to take. It was just about doing something I've never done before, challenging myself, and getting to the finish line. So I want to say this to you. Don't stop. Don't look back. Your finish line, my friends, is waiting. If this message inspired you, moved you, or even reminded you of your greatness, share the love and send it to someone who you want to inspire, empower, and or encourage today. Even better, go register for the next half marathon in your area and see what valuable lessons come your way from, the challenge. I promise it will not disappoint you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today on this episode, the second half of the race. It was a pleasure having you on Brewing Success, where growth is the mission, change is the reward, and progress is the goal.